On my anniversary night, my wife stood still while her father slapped me across the face. In front of 600 guests, no one stepped in, no one said a word, and the worst part, she did not even look surprised. She just stood there watching me like I deserved. Its sound echoed through the hall, conversations stopped, music faded, and then laughter started, soft at first, then louder, like I was not a person anymore. Like I was entertainment. He did not react. My head was still turned, my cheek burning, but inside, everything had gone completely cold. He slowly straightened my face and looked around. 600 people, business partners, friends, family, all of them staring, judging, enjoying, eating right in front of me. My wife, Alara, the same woman who once held my hand and told me I was the only person she could trust now. She could not even meet my eyes. Her father muttered, pathetic, this is the man you chose. People laughed again. I stayed silent because in that moment I understood this was planned. Every smile, every kind word, every fake moment of acceptance, all leading to this. A public execution of my dignity. A year ago, everything was different. I met Alara at a corporate event. She walked in, confident, untouchable, and somehow she chose me. I was quiet, focused, invisible, but not to her. She said I was different, and maybe that is where it started. Got close fast, conversations turned into something deeper, and I fell for her completely. But there was one thing I never told her, not because I was hiding it, but because I wanted something real, something not built on money or power. So when she asked about my background, I told her I did not have much. She believed it, or at least I thought she did. Her family cared from the start. I saw it in their eyes, judgment, calculation. Her father never hid it. He called me unimpressive. And after the wedding it got worse. Comments became constant. You are lucky she chose you. You should be grateful. I ignored it for her, believing she would stand up for me one day. But she never died. At first she stayed quiet. Then she started agreeing, small things, small moments, enough to hurt. And slowly the woman I loved disappeared, replaced by someone colder, someone distant, someone who looked at me like I was beneath her. Still I stayed, because love makes you tolerate things you never should. Then came tonight, our anniversary, a grand event. Everything perfect, almost too perfect. I stood there watching. Something felt wrong, like a quiet warning in my mind. Then her father stood up, raised his glass, and the room went silent. He said, 1 year of this marriage tonight is a moment of honesty. I pointed at me and said I was the biggest mistake, and in that moment I felt something shift inside me, something darker, something final, and for the first time that night I knew this was not just humiliation. This was the beginning of something much bigger. Her father stood there holding his glass, a slow smile forming on his face, like he had been waiting for this moment all night. Oh, year, he said loudly, 1 year of this marriage. A few people laughed, and I just watched him carefully. Said, this evening is not just a celebration, it is a moment of honesty. And suddenly the air felt heavy, like something was about to break. He asked him what truth, and he smiled in a way that had no warmth. He said, the truth everyone here deserves to know. Me, son, made the biggest mistake of his life, he said, and then he pointed at me and said, the mistake is standing right here. Laughter spread across the room, people whispering, watching, enjoying the scene like it was some kind of show. We looked at Alara, waiting for her to say something to stop this, but she stayed silent. She did not even look at me. Continued saying he accepted me, thinking I would bring value into their family, but I brought nothing. He said I had no status, no connections, no power, and every word hit harder than the last. Laughter grew louder, and something inside me finally snapped. I stepped forward and said, that is enough. My voice calm but firm. The room went quiet for a second. He said, you do not get to decide my worth. And the tension shifted slightly, then suddenly everything changed. Before I could react, a sharp sound echoed again, but this time it was not him. It was Ella. Ross slapped me harder, faster, and the entire room gasped. But looked completely calm, completely cold. She told me not to embarrass them, her voice low but sharp. And in that moment something inside me went completely silent. I looked at her, searching for the woman I once loved, but she was gone, completely gone. I said she was done pretending, and that word pretending echoed in my mind again and again. He asked her if this was all an act, and she said nothing, but the silence gave me the answer. Everything tonight, the smiles, the kindness, the warmth, all fake, all planned. Her father stepped closer and said I was a mistake they were correcting tonight, and that was the moment everything became clear. I felt no anger, no panic, no pain, just clarity, pure cold clarity around me. People started laughing again, whispering, watching, enjoying every second. Like it was entertainment that they did not realize something the show was about to change. I reached into my pocket, slowly pulled out my phone, and looked at Alara one last time. I told her I hoped this was worth it, because this moment was going to cost them everything, and people laughed thinking I was bluffing. But I was nobody. Unlocked my phone, pressed call, and when the voice answered, I simply said, "It is time." There was a short pause, and then the voice replied, "Understood," and the call ended. Lowered my phone slowly, and her father laughed again, mocking me, asking who I thought would come in. Then the doors opened and sound cut through everything. The laughter stopped, the music faded, and every head turned toward the entrance. Footsteps echoed through the hall, slow, steady, confident. And suddenly, the entire atmosphere changed. People started moving aside, without even realizing it, creating a pattern. For the first time that night he smiled, because now they were no longer in control. The footsteps continued, slow, steady, controlled, each step carrying a presence that made people move aside without being scared. The crowd split completely, creating a clear path from the entrance straight to me, and no one spoke, no one even breathed. Properly, a man walked forward, calm, composed, powerful, not loud, not dramatic, but undeniable. And three others followed behind him, the kind of people who did not need introductions. Stopped right in front of me and said, "Sir," and even though his voice was low, the entire room heard it. The meeting shifted instantly, not just in the room, but in the way people looked at me, the way they stood, the way they reacted. He nodded slightly, then turned back toward everyone, and this time I was not the man they had laughed. Audie called Alara by her name, and she finally looked at me, confusion, fear, and doubt all visible on her face. They told her she should have stopped them. But before she could respond, her father tried to take control again, asking what kind of act this was. No one laughed this time, no one supported him, because something had already changed. I told them they wanted honesty, so I would give it to them, and I asked a simple question: who do you think paid for this event? Confusion spread across the room. Her father tried to answer, but I stopped him and told him to think carefully. I pointed out the venue, the arrangements, the deals his company had been celebrating, and slowly their confidence started breaking. He asked him who approved everything, who made it possible, and this time he had no answer. The room went quiet again. But this silence was different, heavier, more dangerous. He looked at Alara again and reminded her of the day she asked why I never talked about my work. He told her I preferred simple things, and that was true, but it was not the full truth. Her expression changed completely. As realization began to hit her, her father tried to laugh again, forcing confidence. But it was already gone. A signaled the man standing beside me, and he stepped forward holding a folder, clean, official, undeniable, handed it to her father. And I told him to open it. Under the pressure of everyone watching, he had no choice. His hands shook. As he opened the filet, he flipped through the pages and suddenly froze. His face lost all color, and his lips trembled as he whispered, "No." I told him it was real, and that the deal he had been celebrating, the one securing his company future, was approved by meth. Words settled into the room slowly, and then everything exploded into whispers, shock, disbelief. Alara stepped back, her hand covering her mouth. As she looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time, she asked if I knew all along. And I told her I knew enough. I knew what kind of man I wanted to be. Told her I gave her a full year, to see me for who I am, not what I have in tonight. She made her choice. Her father could not speak anymore, because now he understood not just who I was, but what he had done. I looked at him one last time and told him he did not humiliate me tonight. He only exposed himself, and in that moment everything they believed about me shattered completely. The room stayed completely silent. After my last words, like even breathing had become too loud for anyone, and her father stood frozen, still holding the folder, but now his hands were shaking uncontrollably. As reality finally settled in, confidence he had walked in with was gone, replaced by something fragile, something closed upon. Each tried to speak, but nothing came out properly, just broken sounds. As he looked around the room expecting someone to support him, but no one did, because everyone understood now the balance had shifted completely, and there was no going back. Alara stood behind him, staring at me, her eyes full of shock and disbelief, like she was trying to find the man she once knew. Her voice finally broke as she asked if I had known everything from the beginning. He looked at her calmly and said, "I knew enough to let you show me who you really were." That sentence hit harder than anything else that night, because it was not anger, it was acceptance, final and irreversible. Her eyes filled with tears, but I did not move closer, because that moment belonged to truth. Not emotion. Her father suddenly raised his voice, trying to regain control, saying this could not be real, that I was lying, but I simply nodded slightly, and the man beside me stepped forward again, confirming everything. Without a single word of hesitation, truth was no longer hidden. It was standing in the open, and everyone in that room could feel it weighing down on them. Same people who had laughed earlier now avoided eye contact, some stepping back quietly, realizing they had misjudged everything. Her father's voice dropped as he asked what I wanted from them, now expecting revenge or anger. But I shook my head slowly and said I already got what I wanted. Confusion spread through the room again because they expected punishment. But what I gave them was worse. I gave them consequence. He looked at him and told him the partnership was terminated, the deal was canceled, and every agreement was under review. Each sentence hit like a final nail, and with every word, his face broke further into helpless disbelief, whispered that it would destroy them. And I calmly replied that it was not my responsibility anymore. That was the moment he finally understood. He was no longer negotiating. He was already finished. Delara stepped forward one last time, her voice shaking as she said she was sorry, and that she did not know. For a brief moment, I could see the person I once cared for, but that moment passed quickly. He told her I believe she did not know, but I also believe she chose silence over truth, and silence has a cost. The lips trembled as she tried to speak again, but no words came out this time, because she understood now that nothing she said could change what had already happened. Eddie turned slightly and picked up my coat, preparing to leave, while the room stayed frozen behind me. Her father tried one last time to stop me, but his voice had lost all power, all authority. Stopped at the door without turning back and said something simple, but finally, you did not lose me tonight. You lost the only person who chose you when you had nothing to offer. There was no response, no sound, no argument, just silence settling over everything. And then I walked out, not in anger, in revenge, but in peace, because sometimes the most powerful ending is not destruction, it is walking away without looking back.